Okay, everybody, this is my spoiler review of Silo Season 2, Episode 5, Descent. Please make sure to hit that sub button so you don't miss one of my reviews of Silo. I also do celebrity interviews, and please no book spoilers in the comments. So let's start with everything going on in Silo 18, and then we'll finish off with everything going on in Silo 17. Now, Silo 18, we're continuing from the cliffhanger last week of people from up top running down below, chasing after Shirley and Knox. And you see people are angry, yelling, "They killed the judge!" And our crew knows they have to make it down 2 more levels. So they stop at the Porters. This is someone Carly knew. That is Calvin. It's a place for them to stay, and they're looking for transport through it. But he wants something that belonged to Juliette in exchange for his services. So you're seeing they're building this celebrity that Juliette has in the silo. And Bernard will talk about this more when we get to his scenes. Walter gives him, Calvin, a fake Juliette multi-tool. But in a super rushed moment, they have Knox come in, and it's just like, the judicial raiders are coming, and they connect Calvin with the rat and wants the bounty. So it's the way that Calvin already had got that notice, wanted the bounty, and then he's just like, aha, like really fast. Like, we just met the guy. We also see Carla now is in bad shape, so she tells Walter to go without her, and we'll see that she is actually apprehended by the raiders. But she makes a good point to Walter that Walter does have an advantage from being holed up for 25 years, that she's not as recognizable. People won't know her in other levels. Now, Bernard just shows up in the Sims house. He asks Camille if Rob ever discusses work with her. Very scary. And she's able to put on her best game face and say he doesn't, basically. And you see Bernard says to Sims, "You betrayed my trust, Rob. You made me do something I didn't want to do," in reference to killing Meadows. He says, "But you're too valuable to sideline," and he makes him the judge now. But to Sims, this is a demotion. And Sims will reflect to his wife that once Knox and Shirley are killed, Bernard wins. It's a full reset from the Juliette situation, like she never existed. But this is where we see Camille's true colors start to arise, where she tells Rob that Amundsen, who's replacing him as a judicial security head, he trained him and he is nowhere near as talented as Rob. So Camille is the one who encouraged him to use his power as mayor. She's literally the pillow talk with him this episode that's encouraging him to take things into his own hands, and we'll see her do that as well. So what's forming here is Camille and Rob starting to go away from Bernard and do their own thing, which is going to be interesting, and where they fall into this whole season of Silo and what party they stick with. But you see that Sims is still playing like he's head of judicial security with the Mudson when he goes and sees him and telling him what to do. Now, Bernard with Dr. Nichols, he offers her some of Juliette's stuff. He has the real Juliette multi-tool and other stuff of hers, but he knows anything that's attached to Juliette can cause a stir. It's just now basically a symbol of rebellion. So he wants Nichols to take it away. But Nichols is like, "I got nothing else to lose. You can't control what she means to people. You can't control what she means to me." And the scene was going great for me, but then that face they kept too long on Bernard, that angry face, was just a little corny. And keeping in with the very strange moments in this episode, Bernard will tell Kyle the life expectancy in the mines is 5 years. He says, and I quote, "It's hard duty. I am going to offer you some soft duty." I'm going to say that again. It's hard duty. I am going to offer you some soft duty. So I just could not stop laughing at that line. And I feel like Tim Robbins probably off camera was dying trying to say that with a serious face. I can't believe that got through in the writer's room. But he wants Kyle to use his smarts to fix the hard drive. And he's threatening him and being so cruel by just saying it as like, "You want to live more than 5 years," which is the life expectancy of the mines. So he's like, "You'll do what I say," basically. That your reward is just not being in the mines for a day. And when Kyle shows these hard drive findings, it shows lines that go outside. So this is what we'll talk about when we get to Silo 17, that Solo talks about how there's power that is separate that goes to IT. They also see in the maps on the drive that there's a tunnel under the silo. And the big thing is, he found a handwritten love letter from Salvador Quinn to his wife that turns into code. Salvador Quinn, we already learned, was the head of IT during the rebellion, and Judge Meadows had referenced him and this letter before she died. So there's a lot of theories going around that this letter was the reason she stepped down as Bernard's shadow. She knows way more and why she looked so much into relics about what really happened on the outside through what Salvador Quinn wrote in that letter. So that's a fascinating turn of events there. Now, Knox and Shirley will fight the angry people on the stairs, but Camille is the one who puts an end to it. She says they're going to put these two out to clean, but she ends up helping them and hides them in the janitorial area. Now, Knox admits he was wrong about what to do. He says this to Shirley, but Shirley says she admits her way they would have already been dead, so maybe his nice card approach worked in some ways. So they both kind of admitted their flaws and how strict they were in their ways. But I'm still very bored by these two characters. I still feel like I barely know Knox and Shirley, and I wish they gave us more into them, especially if you're going to have them be our centerpieces of protagonists in Silo 18 now that Juliette is in Silo 17 this whole season. Now, I'm happy Billingsley's finally getting with it by the end of this episode, because it really was starting to feel like he's a sitting duck and a little bit of an idiot. Especially when he says lines like this episode, he's like, do you think Knox and Shirley really killed Meadows? It's like, you roll your eyes because this is a character, you're watching him try to solve things, but you're 5 steps ahead of him, waiting for him to catch up, which finally seems like he's getting at the end here, because he and Hank find Patrick Kennedy in the tunnels, and Patrick Kennedy tells Billingsley in another great line, he was gagged and bagged, and he hands Patrick a picture of the outside Juliette had. So this is where Patrick will tell him anything he wants to know, he says, and we know Patrick knows that Sims threatened him, and he can reveal that Sims was behind that firebomb, which I'm sure Bernard will use to his advantage against Sims now. So Knox and Shirley will go back to Calvin, and they grab cables, and they make the jump off the ledge to mechanical, and grabbing onto the ledge, Knox gets a serious wicked hit from the cable when Edmundson cuts it, and then chaos ensues between the down deep and the level above. But Knox and Shirley at the end of the day are able to get to mechanical, which is a huge win. But Bernard here is panicking, and he calls Billingsley. He's like, the fugitive just became your problem in mechanical. And you see that Billingsley says a classic line he'd always say, but not actually meaning it this time, where he's like, you can always count on me to faithfully serve the silo and the pact. But you see in the background, he's with Hank, his wife, and Patrick. Patrick's going to learn a lot more from him. It's just frustrating now that Billingsley was with Juliette for so long, and him putting the pieces together and believing what she was telling him all along took this long at this point to really get with the program. Just a frustrating character. Now let's go to everything in Silo 17, which was very minimal this week. But like I said, we learned from Solo in the beginning that IT has its own power source and it comes from the outside, which is interesting. Also, we see that the water is still rising in Silo 17. So Solo's like, I have 10 months, but I love Juliette says back to him, well, I have days. Like, you're trying to get me to do this for you, but I'm in a more dire situation. And that is Juliette trying to get a helmet to work with her fire suit. Now, Solo will tell her his real name is Cole Myers, and he got his nickname from riding solo at an event. But we'll see that Juliette finds an employee directory, sees the real Cole Myers, and that he is the true IT shadow, not our Solo, and then finds the apartment of this Cole Myers girlfriend, Trina, and it's a picture of her and Solo, who is Cole Myers. The real Cole Myers and the real Solo. So she confronts him, and he snaps completely. And this was a great acting job by Steve Zahn. He says, I am the IT shadow, I am Solo, and he keeps repeating that. And Juliette makes a run for it while she's also in physical pain, and her forearm's really injured badly, but she's able to find a helmet under the bed and then collapses. So her collapsing now leaves all of this up to Solo and his true intentions. So we'll see what happens with that, but it was very short, which disappointed me a bit. I wanted more time with Juliette and Solo here. They were really an afterthought this episode. I thought everything in Silo 18 was okay, but at this point, halfway through the season, I think this season we can say is a pretty big downgrade from season 1. So I hope they can step it up here and get us really invested. I think just the problem being that the characters that we're supposed to be rooting for in Silo 18 aren't interesting. And finally, we have Billingsley catch up, so that's good. So that should only help. Bernard's the best part going on with it and everything he's plotting and planning. And I really think the strength is Juliette and Solo's story. But there also comes a time, too, where the show really needs Juliette to be with other people at this point because she's really makes the show. So giving this episode a 7.8. Let me know what you thought of it down below. I love to hear your thoughts. I read every comment. Try to respond as many as I can. Hit that sub button so you don't miss one of my reviews of Silo. And I'll see you next time.